Product liability case involves a circumstance where a client is injured as a result of a defective product. We had a case years and years ago where a car was up on a lift. It was a Wrangler, which has got a weird center of gravity, which is why I mentioned it, a Jeep Wrangler. And the lift had 4 prongs that stuck out, and they would drive the car on the prongs, and then the technician would work below as the car is raised above them so they can get under the car. The problem with these arms were that they weren't secured. There was a pin that you could have gotten for $2.15. I don't remember the number, but it was close to that. That would have prevented the arms from moving. And what happened is the guy was torquing underneath the car, the arm slipped, the car fell off and crushed him. And it crushed him, it crushed his pelvis, his legs were split, and it caused what's called a book binding fracture, so his pelvis went like this. So he was a 30-year-old guy or a 20-something-year-old guy who was a mechanic and who was devastatingly injured and could never be a mechanic again. So we sued the manufacturer of the lift. It too was a highly contested case because when damages are substantial, meaning the injuries are substantial, and there's a lot of money at play, it becomes contested quickly. And we were able to prevail against the lift manufacturer, and that meant us going and hiring an engineer to help us understand it, hiring somebody that's in the lift making business to figure out what was state of the art, what kind of knowledge they had at the time. And it turns out in this lift case that the manufacturer's competitor had these pins that for $2.50 would have prevented this accident. And so we were able to help this man who was a solo dad raising his kid by himself take care of his family. So products liability involves a product that is manufactured in a negligent fashion, put into the stream of commerce, and that as a result of its poor design injures somebody. So in the scenario that I gave you involving the lift, the theory was that these arms moved. Everybody knew that these arms moved. It's foreseeable that somebody who's torquing a car, meaning banging on a wrench or something to get it to move, would cause energy such that the car would shift. We prevailed in that case against the manufacturer of the product because our theory was they should have known to put that pin in there. And what we used as information for the jury to consider was that other manufacturers did that. And the kicker in this case was that there was more than just my client that was injured in this way on this product. And again, if you were to go look at one of these lifts now, it has those pins in it. And I'm convinced that we had something to do with that, which is quite rewarding. So products liability case occurs when the manufacturer or anybody in the supply chain sells a product that's defective for its intended use and purpose. By analogy, there's a Roundup weed killer that's quite in the news now. In fact, it's shocking to me because I went to Lowe's or Home Depot and they're still selling Roundup. I believe the chemical formula is different, but this Roundup stuff is hugely dangerous. It causes cancer. And this takes it from the product liability realm and moves it a little bit, but the manufacturer knew of that, and they nevertheless sold it, and they made lots and lots of money on it. Currently popular in terms of what's newsworthy is the opiate crisis. These are people who made drugs, who oversold them. I mean, I forget, in West Virginia, I think it's 1,000 pills for every woman, child, and man, and they did that for years. Now, what? But the manufacturer was reaping enormous profits on selling them, and now the backlash is because so many innocents have died because of that. So now the public is reacting to it. So there's a lot of good that we attorneys can cause by taking on our clients' causes, and positive change can result. So you just asked me, do I think that, does the public have a incorrect notion of lawyers? You know, I think it's probably like everything. I mean, there are good and bad in any profession or in any family. But I think a lot of lawyers get a lot of heat. Sometimes it's really well deserved. Sometimes the theories of these cases that have come before are frightening. The defense bar and insurance companies made a lot out of the McDonald's case where the woman got burned. And I'm not going to go over all of this, but in that case, the lady just wanted to settle the case for the medical bills. And McDonald's superheated the coffee to temperatures ridiculously hot. And I forget, but I think it was something like every day they would make $3 million in coffee sales nationwide. And they superheated the coffee, and they knew that the coffee was dangerous. And even though she had something to do with it in terms of where she positioned the coffee, she had first, second, and third degree burns in her vagina. And all she wanted was to be compensated for the medical bills. And I won't take you through the whole saga, but finally she got to a very creative attorney who was able to explain to the jury the horror of that, and she was awarded a lot of money. And sometimes people look at that as, see, jackpot justice, that's wrong, whatever. But the jury system is designed to let your peers decide something. And it's concerning to me because now there's a lot of states that are putting caps on medical malpractice cases, or meaning capping damages at $250,000. Well, if I have a 3-year-old quadriplegic son who was just butchered by somebody, resulting in them being a quadriplegic, $250,000 doesn't seem rewarding. And insurance companies even really have excellent communication skills for political reasons, because part of the reason that lawyers are considered so whatever they're considered is because of what they want you to understand about lawyers: seeking jackpot justice, not caring about anything that's going on. And that's not the story. So I think that there are good lawyers and there are bad lawyers. There are lawyers that tarnish the reputation of lawyers because they're horrendous. But I think a lot of the fodder of why lawyers are met with such disdain is because it's a public relations maneuver on the part of corporations and insurance company who stand to lose a lot if lawyers prevail in cases. But what's the barrier between society and being exploited by big corporations? Unfortunately, it's lawyers, and it's certainly good lawyers. And so the weird thing about the states that have limits, so they did all this thing, we're driving doctors from our land, they're leaving to go to other places, enact these limits. Well, a lot of these limits have been in place for 10 or 15 years, and it doesn't have anything to do with doctors leaving, and it had nothing to do with reducing insurance premiums, because insurance companies were trying to sell to the doctors that it would reduce their premiums, and to the public it would reduce the costs that you go to doctors by, and it turns out that was all a lie. So can you imagine that? Big business or large corporations lying to the public? I can. Well, no, they don't have limits in products liability cases or in legal malpractice cases or in medical malpractice cases, but they do have absurd things like the minimum limits in an automobile policy is $15,000. I mean, that might have been something in the 80s, but $15,000, I'm not minimizing that. It's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money, But no, Pennsylvania doesn't presently have that. What I'm most proud of as far as practicing law is I get to make a difference. I get to take people that don't have a voice and to give them a voice. And to take people that don't have the ability to handle the system and maneuver them through the system and do it with the hope of doing the best job I can for them. That gives me the most delight.